Hi. This video is going to dive more deeply into the topic of human design and particularly in relationships. I found that out of all the systems of what I call personality matrix systems like numerology, Myers-Briggs, astrology, Enneagram, and of course human design, the one in which has had the most impact on relationships in particular has quite specifically been human design. Now, I often like to mesh this in with astrology or Enneagram as supporting tools, but human design I find to be quite complete in its perspectives of how we navigate our relationships and how we navigate relationships that can be much more fulfilling and filled with much more ease and really and simply create a space for us to just simply be ourselves. I feel like that's really what we are most desiring in a relationship. And I know for myself, relationship and friendship and all of this has become very much a consideration of, is this relationship or is the space that this relationship creates going to support furthering the expression of my natural self, or is it going to hamper that, or is it going to create difficulty? I mean, hamper is kind of a strong word in the sense, especially as we come to a deep knowing of ourselves, there isn't many things that can hold us in any box any longer. But at the same time, we can naturally feel more viscerally within the body where there's going to be resistance in particular relationships or not. And in the relationships in which there's resistance, and oftentimes resistance because there is a lack of following strategy and authority on either end from a human design perspective, then it's going to be up to each party to see if they're willing to continue to explore, following strategy and authority so that that relationship dynamic can improve and come into more ease. And if not, then naturally this is where these types of relationships quite easily dissolve, or they just present a lot of difficulty where it becomes a question as to whether or not one wants to really continue the engagement in that relationship. And so, covering this in my own experience of seeing how transformative human design has been in relationships and specifically within relationships. I mean, it's improved so many other elements of my experience, but within that, it really has shown itself in all its glory, if you will, because the dynamics of us understanding how to communicate from type to type and profile to profile and with different authorities, it brings a whole new awareness as to the subtleties of where there's resistance in particular interactions and relationship, and where there may be things that have been unexplainable for a period of time as to why certain people or certain ways of interacting or certain communication styles just simply do not work with you, or do not work with some other that human design really gives a certain perspective to that. And I mean, there's many other systems and kind of quizzes and tests and things that people have developed and models to kind of give us a bit clearer picture on what our communication style is and how we're best suited to engage in certain interactions. And this is often very connected to our upbringing. It's connected to our parents and traumas and certain experiences we've had through our psychological development. And of course, human design kind of paints that picture as well, but it's coming from a deeper place, right? It's coming from a place of the true essence of the being that then has manifested certain parents or certain happenings, and we can call, our destiny or our karmic unfoldment that has now, created the situation where we like to engage in this way or we don't like to engage in this way, or specific to the mechanics, this is what is correct and this is what isn't. And human design can be kind of black or white in that sense, and we do have to be careful of getting caught up in any particular system and the rigidity of any system. However, I've seen it time and time again reveal the kind of factuality of our reality and of our relative existence and the relative ways in which we move with a particular design. So to dive into the relationship piece a little bit deeper, I'm going to cover just some of the specifics on how we're best suited to interact with any particular profile. Now, it won't be as comprehensive as this extra workshop I'll link here. That's not done by myself, but another fellow human design analysis in the kind of scene of human design on YouTube that I found to be the best and most comprehensive webinar that covers this topic. And of course, when I'm doing readings with people or going into more situational awareness with certain interactions, it gets more in depth, dependent on authority, dependent on profile type, dependent on certain channels and certain interaction elements of the gates and the centers. There's a whole bunch of different dynamics that we can take a lot of time to get into. But if we're just focusing on the aura type, we can start, let's say, with the generator. When we're speaking to a generator, interacting with a generator, it's really important that we're giving the generator an opportunity to respond. And that seems obvious based on their strategy to respond, but particularly the clarity of kind of the yes or no unambiguous nature of questioning. When we put a generator into a situation where it's kind of ambiguous or it's not so direct as to the clear questioning, the clear yes or no. Do you want to go to dinner or not? Do you want to engage in this or not? Do you want to start this project with me or not? It gives an opportunity for the generator to really feel into oftentimes their sacral authority, or some generators of course are going to have emotional authority, but that emotional authority is still going to be connected to the sacral either way. So the yes or no opportunity of that questioning and that opportunity for response is going to go a long way with the generator, because the generator has an opportunity to really feel into themselves and feel into what's going to be most fulfilling for their energy to move in a particular manner. And so anytime any type is interacting with a generator, there's going to be a good opportunity for that to occur. But the manifestor is obviously going to be one that is more so informing on what they're doing, and that may naturally just put a generator into an opportunity to respond. The manifestor is not always most naturally going to want to ask a specific question, and that's sometimes where there's challenge between manifestor and generator, because they are so different in that way. So there's kind of a middle ground sometimes that's important, but that's often why the projector is in the mix when it comes to relationships, the dynamics of the system as a whole, because the projector is the one who kind of bridges the gap between the manifestor and the generator for there to be kind of a translation, for the projector to come into a space of translating that initiation of what the manifestor is informing on, and then giving that opportunity in more clarity to the generator, especially because the projector will know who's best suited or when is the best timing. They have a certain nuanced nature of that awareness. And so that's kind of how relationships in certain dynamics can work together and cross over in their connection, within a grouping and within a tribe. And that's something that I find is actually quite important in bringing awareness to, is when we are aware that we have, say, a manifestor friend or a projector friend or a generator friend or this type of thing within a dynamic of any topic, any happening, any project, anything that we're engaging in. We're to use this to our advantage, because I see it all the time in just the most minute situations of me coming into a room or a space where people are considering doing something, let's say, or they're trying to figure out, and I'm right there. I'm a manifestor, so if I'm informed as to where people are at or what they're wanting to do or what they're wanting to engage in, it's highly likely that something may move through me, or I may be already connected to that in a subconscious or a deeply kind of within the code type of way, connected to the code, that I may look to initiate something that gives the proper, correct engagement for the projectors to guide, or the generators to respond and engage into that. And it's just understanding the bigger picture that gets us out of just this me box, and I'm the only one that exists, and if I'm in a room with other people, it doesn't really matter what's going on. I mean, in some sense it doesn't, but in another sense it can be so beautiful to feel into the dynamics of how the group is interacting and how we can kind of encourage each other to truly live our design and follow that properly. Because I just see it all the time with, let's say, we've just covered how the how any profile really is to engage with a generator, but then specifically, a manifestor to a generator, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. It's oftentimes that we may engage somebody in the design system the way that we would want to be engaged, but this isn't necessarily how we're best suited. And again, going from that perspective of the manifestor just simply informing and not asking the generator, it sometimes gives the generator a difficulty on how to engage. How are they called into the situation? Should they be answering yes or no? If it's ambiguous, they're kind of trying to figure out, well, is this an opportunity to respond? It's not always so clear, and this is important for each of us to be able to really tune into reality, so we're not dependent on the perfected ways of communicating of others. We're really feeling into our own energy field and our own body. But in particular nature, I was going to mention, I had a roommate friend where I remember myself not being quite ambiguous with things, just informing, not really giving an opportunity for this generator to clearly respond or not. And sometimes it made it a bit weird. There wasn't a clear opportunity, and it wasn't so certain. So there was kind of this awkward space that would be created. And when I recognized that it was helpful for me to be sometimes more direct or yes or no, him being also an emotional authority, so giving him more space, more time, no pressuring, not pressuring this generator to respond or not. That created more of a clarity for them than to engage into the yes or no and however they wanted to move with that. Now, on the other end, the generator interacting, let's say, with a manifestor, or let's say any profile engaging a manifestor, the only thing we really can do with engaging a manifestor is simply bringing more information, like informing the manifestor what is going on. And this is not all the time. We're not having to inform all the manifestors in our life all the time, but it's specific that we are informing the manifestors as to what is going to impact them. How are things going to how not necessarily impact them, because we're not often impacting manifestors unless we're making them angry, but it's more particular to letting them know what's up, letting them know where we're at, where the situation is at, where a project is at. If they're involved in something in some way, or we want them to be involved in something in some way, or we feel like that would be beneficial to them or beneficial to the whole or to us, then informing them of what's up and what's going on and what we're feeling and what we're experiencing is just simply giving the manifestor some sort of, we could say, scope, some sort of foundational awareness, some situational awareness as to what they can then continue to tune into themselves. And with that informing, then of course they can inform of what they would like to engage in, right? And very often with a good friend of mine who we've danced with this topic quite often, where there would be particular situations where this friend would want me to engage in something or do something with them or get something from the store for them. So if there's a direct questioning, do you want to come with me to do this? Do you want to do this tonight? Do you want to get this for me? Can you go get this for me? It doesn't give the manifestor a proper way to access their true creativity. This is really what it's all coming down to with all these different forms of interaction, is we want to put our friends, our relationships, coworkers, intimate partners in the best situation for them to access the true aspect of themselves, the true flowing nature of their expression. And if this isn't, the way in which that's occurring, and that's not the way in which we would want them to move, then we would not follow that, right? And this is, of course, not what we want, but we demonstrate this by not considering this, with or without knowledge of human design, right? A lot of us don't have the knowledge of human design, so we perpetually go in these same ways and these same motions, but they don't support, each profile being able to access that deepened creativity. So it's vital that in this case, specifically with the manifestor, because they're so they're so much more impactful in a positive way when they're deeply in tune with their own creative process, their own inner workings, the inner code that no other profile really has the ability to access. So when we're putting a manifestor in a situation where we are trying to get them to answer yes or no to something, at least in my experience, the way that I feel it when people do this to me is I feel this kind of, it's like, sure, of course I can answer the question. I'm not, I'm not a robot, and no, none of us are. So this is very much all in the gray area. But I do feel the kind of clenching inwards. I feel this clear inability to access what is truly wanting to come forth. What do I truly actually desire to engage with in the situation? And so when the shift is made from that way of communicating to more of informing, letting the manifestor know this is what's going on. Hey, I want to make I want to make a certain dish later. I want to make this food, and I need this from the grocery store, but I'm not able to get it. It'd be great if you could get it. Let me know if you can. Or not even saying that, just literally just letting them know the fact that this is what the situation is. I want to make this meal for us, but I don't have this. If the manifestor really is engaging properly in their creativity, they will be able to feel into whether it's correct for them or not to desire to go get that, that thing from the grocery store, or to feel into something of whether or not they want to engage this event with a bunch of people. It's like, hey, we're having this great party. Just letting you know it's at 7 on Friday. The letting know, the informing, the giving the goods, the information on the platter, without any expectation, without the attachment, without the subtle manipulation of trying to get them to do it for you, because this is never going to work with a manifestor. This then gives them opportunity to feel into their creativity, and we're often very surprised in a really beautiful way of how much the manifestor can do, what they can engage, what they can inspire, what they can initiate when they're given their space and time to do so. And we have to, again, let go of our expectations and our attachments and our subtle ways of manipulating, because we really can't expect anything from anyone really, and specifically a manifestor, because they're in their own space, their own world, they're in their own kind of trajectory, and nothing really is going to be able to get in the way of that. And if we do, and if we experience, putting them in a situation to respond, this is where we start getting the anger from the manifestor back. And depending on where the manifestor's at, they may be able to deal with it in a healthy way. I know for myself, I'll feel it and I'll just communicate very clearly on how it's best to engage with me. I'm not going to let that anger get out of hand. But some may not be able to, and then that's when we really feel that whiplash back, which is a very interesting dynamic, right? So I hope this is clear for this profile with the manifestor, because there's so much beauty that we can experience with when manifestors around, but we really cannot be putting them in a situation to respond. And of course, we have to take this with a grain of salt. Sometimes there's some practical situations, a question comes out or this, so it's both on the manifestor and the other types to be in a place of non-rigidity with this, because I know I've been in this before, and I know I've seen others. And that also doesn't help anything, right? If we're really trying to experiment and learn with the system. Now, if we move to the projector, projectors are so interesting because, they do have this ability to be so successful, and not just successful in the material way or the traditional way we think, but to exude this successful confidence, this kind of essence about them. I think of like the fur coats and the baths with the essential oils, and having the successful, confident way of speaking and communicating. And just so many ways. I see them a lot on social media. I have a lot of friends that are projectors, and I see them both acting in their alignment and out of their alignment, and it's just interesting to observe, because it's oftentimes the projectors who are out of alignment are really going to be quite overwhelming. They can be the most overwhelming of profiles, even more so than a manifestor I've seen, because what they have to say and what they have to share, and the power in which they come into it, because it's so piercing, right? It's such a piercing aura. It sees through things. That energy, when it's unsolicited, or it hasn't been invited, it hasn't been asked for, that again is going to be very overwhelming. It's going to come with a real intensity to it. that is certainly something to bring awareness to, right? I've known some in particular that I've just seen to be extremely overwhelming, and of course, as we deal with our own strategy and authority, and even beyond human design, just coming to a deep healing within ourselves, we're not going to be so irritated by that, but we are going to feel it. It's important that becoming truly awakened or enlightened or these things actually makes us more sensitive to when things are off, and that's the beauty of becoming awakened. It's not that you don't feel anything. It's many times you feel things more deeply, but you're in such a rooted center that it doesn't sway you. So then there can be an actual constructive way to deal with it, and that's what I hope to bring to people when I engage with them or doing readings or whatever. But when we particularly focus on the projector and their dynamic of the intensity of what they want to share, and sometimes impatience because they want to be recognized, they want to be seen for what they have to share, this can come without that invitation, right? It can come a bit too fast. It can come out of place, out of order, and unsolicited. And again, giving advice without being asked is something none of us should be doing, but a projector specifically, because they're going to be hit with so much pushback. So, of course, the conditioning of the early years of projector and their younger years of not being recognized or asked properly to share their feelings or share their perspectives, this makes them kind of on a rampage at times to want to share to everyone and show what they're worth. And, maybe they have an undefined will or something like this that makes them want to really show themselves even more. And there's different dynamics of where it can manifest more, and also dependent on the channels, right? I'm not really getting into the channels today, but that can also really change the dynamics of each type, and then how we're needing to wait in certain ways, or even if we're a manifestor, or if you're a manifesting generator and you have the 3420 channel, then you do have a little bit of a manifestor energy. Although you are going to be responding primarily, there is going to be an importance for you also to be informing and letting people know what you're doing, because you do bring an intensive impact. So I'm digressing here, but there's more depth to what we're speaking about, and I hope we understand. And of course, I can go into this in a reading or in future videos. Though when we focus on the projector and the dynamic of their essence being potentially overwhelming, it's only overwhelming because we're not ready for it, we're not wanting to hear it. But when we do want to hear it, it can be deeply healing. And this is what brings the success from the projector. It brings their ability to see someone, or see an organization or a group or a dynamic of a gathering of some sort, of how things can be engaged in a more successful and a deeply with this deep intuition and this deep ability to perceive everybody in the whole field in a really beautiful way. So they're best suited to be sharing what they feel and what their perspectives are, and how can we all be more successful together or individually. So it's important that we're putting a projector in the situation to share what they feel. I've said this often in sessions that I do with a projector, outside of potentially the initial reading, or if it's specific that they're looking for me to inform on something particular, or if I'm feeling that and that's what's moving. I'm oftentimes not going to be giving, firstly, a projector too much advice, because projectors do not like advice that much. And specifically, I'm just simply asking, well, how do you feel? What's up? What's going on? And sometimes a session with a projector can go almost an entire session without me saying much at all, because there's so much that they want to share. And particularly if they're self-projected, let's say, or don't have an authority, there's going to be a beauty of them being able to hear themselves and share and receive the real gift of having a mirror in front of them that has been inviting them to share and asking for them to give their perspectives, and then they have an ability to move with that, and then hear themselves, and then know even more deeply what it is that they're meant to act on, or how they're meant to direct their experience or engage. And so this is a really beautiful flow, because they have so much power in bringing success, especially when they're combined with the manifestor initiation, the generator movements, and the ability to engage energy. Because it's often that the projector is going to be the one who is doing more than anybody else, because they're not an energy type, so they reflect that, and then they end up becoming more busy and more active and more doing than everybody, but very quickly get run out. And so again, it's our responsibility on a certain level that when we have projector friends or coworkers or intimate partners, that we put them in that situation to thrive. because they're already quite impatient. So sometimes it's good. We have to go through our own strategy and authority, right? So we're not just asking, for advice or getting a projector to share things when we don't even want that, just because we're feeling the pressure of their impatience. I've been in those situations before, and I didn't cave, and they kept jumping the gun, and then they kept hitting the manifestor aura, and their own not self theme of feeling that lack of recognition, feeling rejected, but that's a part of their process. So, again, when we're each following our own proper strategy and authority, and listening through awareness to the whole of our design, then we give that power for each other person to do that as well, and that's sometimes painful. So it's important. But again, if we are in balance with that, then we can be putting projectors in positions to really, again, invite them into the situation, invite them into the conversation, invite them into sharing what they have to say, because it's more often than not, they're going to have some beautiful things to share that's going to be of benefit to you and everybody else. All right. So again, that's quite general, because it may be different in particular to how, Manifestor is informing to the projector, and then maybe asking the projector how they feel a bit, or, what kind of guidance they can give as they're already underway with something, or, the generator just really looking for that direction, that clear direction of what they want to respond to, etc. But there's other nuances to this that can be dived into in more depth. But the last one is looking at the reflector. Now, every profile interacting with the reflector is going to be similar in the light that we all have to be kind of initiating with the reflector. The reflector is really the one profile that really is not meant to be initiating anything. And I've had a number of reflector friends, more than it kind of beats the odds, particularly. But I'm sure some of us had that. But I've had a lot of experience with them, specifically a 10-year relationship with a reflector, that I learned a lot about the beauty of what a reflector is, for one, in their ability to reflect everything that you are in every moment, and everything that the tribe or the overall group of their environment is. So they're really always have kind of a hand on the scope, or sorry, I don't know what the analogy I'm using, but they have a hand on the pulse. That would be a fingers on the pulse. That would be the best analogy to this, of what the health of individuals and tribes are. What is the health of the community? They're going to be the ones to reflect that. So you can't run from a reflector. Everything that you are is going to be there, which is a whole other video. But all of us need to be initiating with a reflector, because the reflector is the one that's not meant to be initiating at all. And I see this often with this friend in my life, and many others that I've seen who are reflectors. When they try to initiate something, how off it feels. It feels so off. It just feels so incorrect. But again, if you're not in tune with yourself and the body and all these dynamics, you're not going to be able to see it. So it's going to kind of pass you right by. But it will inevitably result in the kind of overall dissatisfaction with their experience. On all of us, we'll all be experiencing not self in different ways when we feel into the subtleties of when something is not correct. But with a reflector, yeah, we all need to be kind of, even the generators and projectors, initiating with reflectors to engage something. And a lot of times, in my experience with reflectors, it's really just surrendering to the wisdom that comes just by being in the presence of a reflector. It's like you don't even have to do anything, and what's going to come up is yourself, what you're not seeing, what you are seeing, what you need to appreciate more. Everything is just going to come to the surface. So they really become a beautiful mirror to reflect back what is most needed. And that's why I always love asking questions to reflector, or engaging them and trying to just share what they're feeling about me, about a situation, about all kinds of things, and then engaging them into certain things of especially things of surprise. I mean, reflectors love surprise because they're always almost like in this childlike awe. And so I remember for a while I would get kind of irritated about how surprised this reflector I knew would get around just the simplest of things that I thought were just so normal, and it would be kind of weird or irritating. But then I realized, well, that's just part of their journey. They're just ongoingly in a surprise, because everything is new and everything is fresh for them, in the light that they don't really have anything to rely on. They're constantly being like a chameleon, or taking in the environment, taking in everybody that's around them. and experiencing that. It's like they experience everything with you. So there's a beauty of bringing reflectors into the engagement, into the situation, not putting them in a situation to work, or needing to do a bunch of tasks or a bunch of that, because that's not really best where they're best suited. They're really just meant to be there, like just be around, be in the situation, be that oracle that it likes to express themselves, when we call for that to occur, when we're engaging them in that way. And then if the reflector is, if people know this about the reflector, then they will feel more engaged. They won't initiate out of turn, or whenever. I mean, they really are not meant to be initiating at all. So they're going to be more in the center of the community, because people will want to engage them because of this so much benefit we that is brought by a reflector. And then they'll continuously be engaged and initiated, so they won't feel the boredom or the kind of stagnancy that can occur sometimes, if they are kind of not engaging or not initiating, but nobody's really appreciating them in that way. So that can be tricky. But yeah, I mean, I could go on a lot about reflectors because I've had so much experience with them, and they are obviously 1 in 100, so they're more rare than all, and the dynamics of them are so different than every other type. But that's a good general synopsis that goes over all of the different interaction types here with the certain aura types. And of course, there's a lot of different nuances with each, like I said, that can only really be gotten into in a longer workshop style, which I do have a link for a beautiful one that you guys can message me, or it'll be linked somewhere around this video. And of course, getting a reading, going in depth with this, and seeing, particularly if you're having challenges in a dynamic of work, or a dynamic of intimate relationship or friendship, family, that you have, you can engage both charts and we can look at them, because there's a lot of detail that we can get into with the gates, the centers, the channels, the profile types, and the authority. And I mentioned a bit about the authority there, but that will all give so much more insight to what is really going on, and it really tells the tale. I mean, it's so easy when I look at things now in certain relationships of why certain things happen in certain ways, because it's right there. It's it's like right in the mechanics. And even so, I've been one to share about how I'm not so caught in any system in particular. I study some of what I view to be the cream of the crop systems, at least from spiritual awakening, enlightenment, and ascension systems that are available today in this modern age. But I don't really get caught up in any of them, because I realize anything that is named is not it, in a sense that everything that's named is still a part of the translation of language and our own projections of who translated it, who's teaching it, who created it. So there's always going to be distortions or limitations with that, but we can use each at our disposal and see how they work, see how they engage our experience in a more beneficial way, and then kind of flow with that. So that's all for me for now. I enjoyed sharing all this. I've been meaning to share all of this for some time. Yeah, if you want to